Welcome to Born or Made, the podcast that dives deep into the heart of success and identity. Are the traits that define us as leaders ingrained from birth, or are they carved out throughout our experiences? Join your host, Anne-Marie LaTulip, as we ask these questions to some of the most insightful and inspiring entrepreneurs of our time. Each episode, we explore their journeys, the decisions that shaped them, and how they've molded their own paths to success. So whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, or simply curious about the interplay between nature and nurture in professional growth, you're in the right place. Get ready for compelling stories, transformative insights, and a new perspective on what it really takes to make it in the world of entrepreneurship.
All right, welcome to the Born or Made podcast. I am Anne-Marie LaTulip. Born or Made podcast. This is the podcast to figure out, are we born entrepreneurs and that 1% crazy, as Russell Brunson says, or do we adapt into it based on life decisions we make and choices we're faced with, that kind of thing. Basically, it's a safe space for us to talk about just about anything. And joining with me today, my first guest is Jessica Terzakis, right? Did I say it wrong again?
You got it. Yes, you got it.
Jessica is awesome. I met Jessica at Funnel Hacking Live last year, and we've stayed in contact, actually not far from me, kind of a neighbor, right? Portsmouth, right?
Yeah, but I think we're probably like an hour apart, I think.
Yeah, not that far, considering all the places people came from at Funnel Hacking Live, right?
Right.
So, all right. So I know who you are, and I know what you do and how awesome you are. So will you tell everyone else that might not know who you are what you do?
Yeah. So, hey, everyone. Thank you, Anne-Marie, so much for inviting me on to be I'm very honored to be your very first guest on this podcast. So I am a course creator. That's probably the simplest way to label who I am. I used to be a high school teacher before I became an entrepreneur. And then I joined my mom's existing business at the time. And then we became business partners. So yes, I work with my mother, and our specialty is helping entrepreneurs, whether they are service-based in the online world or whether they are an electrician or a plumber. We help businesses with the operations so they can continue to grow and scale. And bundled in that is how they can create other revenue streams. And that's where I come in helping people package their expertise in the form of an online course.
Okay. So was that something that your mom had to convince you to do to join her, or was that something that you were interested in?
Oh, so we actually have a very funny story about this, Anne-Marie, and I think we have two different versions.
Oh, that's fun. Let's hear
Because yeah, so my version is, so I was, in the context of are we born or made entrepreneurs?
Right.
I think I'm very much made, because my plan from childhood, I didn't do the lemonade stand. I didn't do the entrepreneurial stuff.
Wow.
I always pretended to be a teacher. And so it very much made sense that I pursued kind of that academic, like I got my master's in teaching. I planned to retire as a teacher. I made it a whole whopping 6 years before I realized very quickly that there was just no financial opportunity available to me as a teacher long term. I loved my students. I loved who I worked with. I loved being a teacher. It's just financially it wasn't viable. So it was my 5th year. I had just gotten tenure, and I was like, okay, what am I going to do? And I think I really I hit that crossroads of, if I stay another year, I'm never going to leave. And so I have to leave now. I did not actually have a plan at the time, which was very unlike me, but I just knew if I come back for another year, I'm never leaving, right? I'm in. And so when I left, I didn't really have a clear plan at the time. And my mom had already started the business. It was like 2 years in, and she was working with tons of clients. I didn't really understand what entrepreneurship was. I didn't understand what she did. I'm like, oh, you just meet with business owners, right? Like, I didn't get it.
Yeah.
And so at the time, I didn't really have, like I said, I didn't have a plan. I was doing some odd and end kind of jobs. And she was like, listen, I'm trying to grow this thing. I've always had vision of working with my family in this business. Why don't you, come try this? That's how I remember it. Now, she, I think for the better part of 2 years was like planting the seed of like, hey, I think you've got an opportunity in an entrepreneurial kind of situation. Like, why don't you come join me? And so I think it was a combination of her probably dropping hints and me not being fully aware of it. And then at the time when I had left and I was like, what am I going to do? Like, I have this degree, I have this experience, I've got what no one is hiring. No one was really hiring at the time. This is back in like 2016. The world has obviously changed significantly. And I was like, well, what have I got to lose? So that's how I came into it. But I would say in many cases it was totally based in the situation. It was not necessarily something I had planned. I was not one of those people who was like, I need to leave my career and I've got this thing on the side that I can turn into a business. I had nothing, right? So it's a pretty wild kind of moment for me. Yeah.
Yeah. So now that you are in that entrepreneurial space, do you feel like it's a genuine place that you love being in, or do you sort of miss the structure of the teaching?
I would say now it's I think my seventh
Yeah,
year in business. I cannot imagine going back. I
really?
honestly cannot. No. Actually, for the better part of like, I would say the first 2 years, I had what I call like an employee mindset. I was a W-2 worker, meaning I had my schedule totally structured for me when I was a teacher. I knew where I needed to be when. My pay was consistent no matter what I did. And I had that, what it was in my mind at that point, stability in terms of people just telling me this is where you need to be, this is how you're going to get paid, easy. Once I became an entrepreneur, I had no idea how to structure my time. I had no idea. Like, it's so funny. Like, people always talk about like the freedom that comes with entrepreneurship, but that's very overwhelming for someone like me who was, I don't think, born to be an entrepreneur. I was like, it's a Wednesday morning. What now? Like, what do I do with myself? What do I do with my time?
Yeah, that's the hardest part is time management, in my opinion. It-
It is because it's like, I had a boss when I was a teacher. I had my department chair, I had my students, I had deadlines, and it was like, I am not only in charge of my time, but I'm now in charge of my own destiny. Like, the sky's the limit. And I think for a lot of people who are, this is my perception, a lot of
yeah,
people who are born to be entrepreneurs, like that is something they want. They thrive in that kind of environment. For someone like me, I was like, what do I do with myself?
that's
But
so
now, fast forward like 5-ish years later, I can't imagine being so rigid and so structured and having all these different meetings to go to and not being able to sort of do what I want to do on my own terms. I think I've really learned how to become how to be an entrepreneur. And so I can't imagine going back. I
that
really
is
can't.
so interesting. And let me ask you this. That's something else I wanted to touch on, especially because you were an educator. Um,
Mhm.
you weren't an early educator though, right? What did you teach?
Oh, I taught high school.
Right. Okay. So
Yeah.
do you feel that in early education, that being you're taught about entrepreneurship and owning a business should be something that is brought into the curriculum? Because I know it might be now. I haven't been in school in a long time. But for me, I know that none of that was embraced. I mean, it was all about going out and finding a job, you know, pay back your student loans, get a job, do all this stuff. It was never really talked about, becoming a businesswoman, especially a woman, right? A
Mhm.
businesswoman, entrepreneur. Do you feel like that's something that they should include in early education?
I think it'd be a great idea. I do think that now I've been out of the classroom for 7 years now, so I'm not entirely sure what it looks like or what is taught. And I know it varies so differently from state to state. But what I would say is I think that there was a pervasive thought. It was like, you get good grades, you do well, you go to college, you get a job. I think there's been a shift, and this was actually a beautiful thing about the high school where I taught. They had a
Yeah,
really robust, they called it a career and technical education program, for students who, college and university was not the pathway for them, but there were obviously very viable careers, that they could pursue instead. And I do wish that entrepreneurship was one of those. So I think not only maybe introducing it in early childhood, but really helping foster that for high schoolers. Because I even look back now and I think about some of my students, and they don't fit the mold of you're going to sit in a desk, in rows for hours upon hours and just, sit there and learn. There's so much evidence and so many studies. And I think it's just even anecdotal. You talk to people who are successful entrepreneurs, they didn't do well in school, but they're brilliant. They're super talented. And unfortunately, the system just doesn't do enough to foster that.
that,
And they
right.
end up feeling really crappy about themselves, it's like because they don't fit the mold.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, absolutely. And that's, part of the reason why I wanted to dive into this topic is because that was me. I mean, I must have had in my early life, I must have had at least 25 jobs, maybe,
wow.
because I just couldn't. And at that time, I thought, oh my God, I am unemployable. Like, I just
Mm,
cannot keep a job. But the problem was, and now that I've been sort of in this life for a longer time, I know looking back that I couldn't have a boss. I just couldn't have a boss. I always wanted to do more and bigger and better ideas than whatever was laid out in front of me, and
mm.
I just never got along with my boss. And so I know now looking back that that was because I needed to be my own boss and, enter the entrepreneur world. But at the time, I just felt like an outcast. And I think that, incorporating that in education would have helped.
Oh, it absolutely would. And I think too, I started teaching when I was 23. I was young when I started
Wow.
teaching. And
High
so
school.
high school, I know.
Three?
I got confused to beat me for being a high schooler way more often than you would think. But I even think, looking back at it, I didn't even know that, I couldn't spot the students who are like, I think either entrepreneurial or just more of a visionary kind of thinker, just like a different, there's other opportunities for you. I didn't know how to spot that and foster that with students. And I know parents would get very frustrated that, their child was struggling and there wasn't a clear solution for them. And, it definitely, I would say the one size fits all, I think, approach. I got the impression when I was leaving that there were shifts and trying to move away from that. I don't know how quickly that has happened, especially with COVID. I don't know what that did to a lot of curriculum
Yeah.
initiatives. But I do think it would be amazing to just foster that from a younger age and even just introduce that as a career path, because I think it was Gary Vaynerchuk I was listening to where he was saying, years ago, entrepreneurship was this thing where it was like, well, you couldn't hold a job, you couldn't do anything else, you just started business, right? It was sort
Yeah.
of like the fallback of like, well, you can't do anything else, become an entrepreneur. Whereas now it's so different, people aspire to be entrepreneurs. There's so many different creative opportunities that it wouldn't surprise me if there was more of a conversation around that in the curriculum.
Right. Yeah, and especially with the digital landscape, the way it is
Mhm.
now versus the way it was, when we were younger, there's so much more opportunity.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
now I
What's really fascinating? I was talking with a local business owner, and he was telling me that CPAs. Now, I don't have any data to support this, but he's a financial advisor, works with a lot of CPAs, and he said there's a tide turning where a lot of CPAs are retiring, right? They're older, they're retiring from the business, closing the business or selling it. And there isn't a new influx of people coming in to become CPAs because the younger crowd who are talented, maybe have that entrepreneurial drive, like they see that there's lots of other creative opportunities in the entrepreneurial world. Like, I don't know, I'm not saying influencer, but there's a lot of other ways that you can make money as an entrepreneur that don't involve the grind, right?
right, right.
So it's to your point. I think there's some really cool opportunities coming up for people, and I don't even think we can even predict, you and I, what they are,
Oh
what
God,
they're going to be even a year from now or 2 years from
with
now.
AI, I mean, it's just insane what people are doing with AI, and so I think that's going to open up a whole nother realm of platforms and softwares and
Hmm.
coaches and all of it. I think that's going to be something crazy in 5 years. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, yeah. So I think for those, especially people who are trying to foster, a career for their child that aligns with who they are. I mean, entrepreneurship's absolutely an option, and I would hope, my fingers are crossed, that schools will embrace that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that they're going to have to. I think, especially with all the creators, I think that's sort of the gateway into, in my opinion, that's the gateway into entrepreneurship, are these young kids that are, creators and social media, TikTok videos and all that, which is, I look back, I don't know, I look back at my high school years, and if we had had technology and social media the way that we do now when I was in high school, oh my God, that would have been awful, because I don't know about you. I was bullied in high school, like bad, right? So I
Hmm.
can't even imagine having the access to affect so many people's lives with social media at that young of age. I can't even imagine.
No, I mean, so I was at that shift of, we didn't have smartphones at the time, but we had the technology, we had MySpace, and then Facebook. I was the group that you could only have Facebook if you had a university or college email address, right?
Okay.
I was that, like, we all were the millennials, like the elder millennials are like, I was part of that crowd where you could only have Facebook with a college email. And I don't think I knew what to do with it back then. I didn't realize its potential, but I do think that just the ability to just create something and then you're exposed to hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, like that would be too much. Too much. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. MySpace. I haven't thought about that in years. I remember,
Sometimes I romanticize. I'm like, that was so simple back then, right? It was
and
so
then
simple.
I remember when Facebook first came out, because I loved my MySpace page. I loved it. It was like a work,
Yeah.
of course, I love creating, web design and all of that. So that was just a thing for me. I loved it. And then when I had to switch over to Facebook, I'm like, this is so boring and plain. Like you just can't even decorate it. But
Right.
it's just, I think that there's such a, oh my God, these kids on social media. I know my boyfriend's 16-year-old. Every time he comes to visit us, he's like constantly the phone's in his hand. And I can't imagine that being the case when I was his age. He's 60. I think I said he's 16. So
Yeah.
anyway, where we're headed, back to what we were talking about, where we're headed, I just can't even
But you
imagine.
know, some of my favorite people to follow on, I don't spend a lot I have to be careful on TikTok because I will scroll and scroll and scroll. So I intentionally do not go on there. But I do like Instagram, and some of my favorite creators, they're young. They must be in their 20s. They're comedic, right? They do these comedic little sketches in their reels. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, so how could they turn this into, to your point, how could they turn this into a business, right? The course creator brain of mine never shuts off because I'm like, okay, so he could go in this direction and start doing this, and he could do that, and like really turn this into not just something where he's hoping to get tons of views and followers and some brand
Right.
endorsements, but like a true business. And so I do think for those who are savvy enough, if they start creating, they could very easily turn that into a business.
Yeah, absolutely. Who are, if you don't mind sharing, I would love to hear, who are some of your favorite
Oh my gosh. Okay,
am I
hold
putting
on.
you on the spot?
Well, now I'm gonna have to remember his name. Let me see if I could find him. He cracks me up. I think his name, Zachariah Porter. Oh my God. I think he's probably lives in like Rhode Island or Massachusetts, and he is a riot. You'll have to follow him,
I'm gonna follow him. I'm gonna write it down.
but like, he impersonates, he does this like sketch, and it's like through all of his reels, he impersonates being a mom. And it is the funny, I'm telling you, you are going to die. I'm not doing it justice. But I just looked at his Instagram page. He's got he does a podcast, he does brand endorsements. I'm like, I see it. I see the pathway.
That's so great. And again, like we said, there's just so much more opportunity for young people now than there was for us. I mean,
Absolutely. Yep.
it's just it's just crazy. So let me ask you this, kind of switching gears a little bit, back to what we were talking about, how you feel specifically you were made into an entrepreneur rather than feeling that as a young age. So do you think that there is any major decision or choice that you were faced with at a young age that sort of made you feel that way, that you were, more comfortable in a structured environment, or let me ask it in a different way. Do you
Yeah.
feel like you would be in a different place? Was there any point in your life where you made a decision that you feel that if you had made a different decision, you'd be someplace completely different?
Well, I think what helped me pursue the career of teaching and more of the stability of having a career as opposed to owning a business. So I grew up as a military kid, and
I see a lot, probably.
I moved a lot. And so we lived in the United States the entire time, but I moved probably every two to 3 years. So I was constantly a new kid. And for me, I never really excelled or was interested in sports. And so and just the fact that I had to move so often made it difficult for continuity of like, okay, you're going to join soccer and you're going to do all this. So when I was the new kid, what I found solace in and what I found was easy to adjust to a new school with was I'm going to get really good at school, right? I'm going to do really well. I'm going to study. I'm going to get good grades. And I fell in love with just learning, and it deepened my love for the idea of becoming a teacher. And I always will remember my junior high school English teacher because I just found her to be so glamorous and so smart, and I loved what she taught. And so I was like, I want to be like her. And I think that solidified at the time what I wanted to do as a career. So I think that answers your first question of like, was there a moment or something that you think contributed to you being made? I think that was it, if I had to really look back on it. And I think I thrived in the stability because I was looking for stability, right? You know, my parents did a great job of helping us adjust. And I think it was such a fun childhood. But obviously when you're moving a lot, you're looking for how can I stabilize the
Yeah,
situation, you know,
yeah.
and so for me, it was academics.
And it's interesting to me that you always had really good grades, but
Mhm.
yet in a different school. So how
Yeah.
hard is that um, to just go from curriculum to curriculum? Because, like you say, it varies so much from state to state. So was that a challenge?
Oh, absolutely, because it's different, you know, you know, when I lived in Florida, for example, you know, the school was super, super easy at the time. This was back in like 1998. I don't know what it's like now, but back then I just remember like school was so easy. Then we moved up to New Hampshire in New England, and it was so much more difficult. So I think that's just where I found like I can get really good at school, and that's where I'm going to put my attention. And I think in a way, what's ironic, I suppose, is that the very thing that helped foster a stable like teaching career, I think also has helped me be an entrepreneur because I was constantly the new kid. I was constantly having to meet people, be in front of people, talk, you know, just make friends and put myself in uncomfortable situations, which I joke all the time. I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm constantly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So it's funny. There's sort of the duality of that childhood experience.
And I love it too because it's almost like it came back full circle because now not only are you've left the teaching, but now you're teaching.
Yes, it is.
So you've gone sort of as a level above what you were so comfortable doing, and now you're teaching others how to do that,
Mhm.
which I find fascinating.
Well, and I think too, what helped me become an entrepreneur is, you know, when I left teaching, I was like, excuse my language, I was like, shit, like, what am I going to do with this degree? Like, I spent all this time and money on this, and I was thinking so one dimensionally and so literally regarding what I could do. And I was like, well, if I'm not in the classroom, I'm not teaching. I just could not get my mind around that. And what I've realized is I still teach, like you said, all the time. It just looks different. And so I think that the beauty of entrepreneurship and becoming an entrepreneur has really allowed me to fulfill all the things I imagined when I was younger that I would do professionally. It's like, oh, I still have this impact. I'm still helping people. I'm still teaching. It's just not in a high school classroom, but it's still
Right,
teaching.
right, absolutely. And it's more, I wonder, is it different now? You're teaching sort of on a one-on-one, I would imagine, right? Is that how your
Mhm.
business is structured? Yeah. So teaching on a one-on-one versus a bunch of kids in a classroom probably has more of a fulfilling. Is that more fulfilling for you, or does it not matter?
Well, I think there's fulfillment in both you know, both scenarios. I think with the high schoolers, right? It's I always joke it was the toughest audience in the world. I sold
Ah,
to the toughest audience in the world. I had to
right.
get them to read the books they didn't want to read. And so I think there were those moments where you could see the impact that you were having on a student who either really struggled or was just really apathetic and had no interest, and the light goes off and you're like, "Oh, I did it." Right, I help them. But I think in terms of there really is something very special about supporting other business owners because you know that it has real world impact, right? The way that you can help them and teach them has direct impact not just on their lives, but on their families' lives and then on their clients' lives. And it just creates this really amazing ripple effect. So I think it impacts both.
Yeah, yeah. That's so interesting. I love that story about
Yeah.
just how it came full circle for you. So tell me, not to change the subject, but what is it like working with your mom?
I love it. Okay, so we get kind of two responses in when I tell people I work with my mom. I think one is a reaction of adoration, like, oh my gosh, I would love to work with my daughter, or I would have loved to work with my mom, sort of that yearning of I would have loved that chance to do that. And then the other is on the opposite end of the spectrum where they're a bit horrified or like, whoo, I don't know if I could do that. How do you make that happen? But I think that what works for us is we have very different personalities. So believe it or not, I'm actually quite introverted and quiet. And my mom is very extroverted, a big visionary thinker, very much born to be an entrepreneur. And so I
Yeah.
think that the two of us have very complementary personalities and energies. And we've always been that way. I think one, we were just always very close and friendly with one another. So I think that worked in our favor. But our styles and personalities also are different enough for it to work in the business. And I think that, for people who are trying to figure out, like, how do I would love to work with my family or work with a team. How do I get that to work so seamlessly? Because I think honestly, Anne Marie, in the 7 years we've worked together, we've had maybe one disagreement, one like not fight like you see on the reality shows where like people are throwing chairs and stuff, but
Yeah.
like one like true like disagreement where it was like a little heated, but that's it.
Wow. That was my
Yeah.
next question. Are there ever moments when you don't agree? Wow. That's great.
No.
That's
Now, the first 2 years, we had to figure out how to work with each other professionally in a business. We had to figure out, our styles. She's very much she gets an idea like I think we should start a podcast, and she would literally do it the next day. Whereas I'm a little bit more cautious and investigate. I like to investigate things. So it's like, okay, well, what's the podcast name going to be, and why are we doing it, and what's the objective, and what's the strategy? I would ask so many questions, and so I think we had to figure out each other's styles and how we approach things to really make it work.
yeah, I imagine. Yeah. Now, do you remember as a kid, was she, running her own businesses then? Was she doing what she's doing now? Did you grow up watching her do this? I guess is my question.
I didn't watch her growing up running businesses, but she did do a lot of things in leadership positions. So for example, my one of my very first vivid memories of her professionally is I was probably in the 6th grade. She became a business banker, which she had her own book of business, right? Underneath the shingle of the bank. And I remember helping her stuff envelopes to send to businesses to, see if they wanted to grow their business, get funding, seek loans. And I was sit in front of the TV and I would stuff envelopes with her. And so, I kind of watched the arc of her, as a business banker to then starting, she worked at Southern New Hampshire University right before she started our business and helped set up I'm going to butcher this. I think it's the Center for Women in Business Advancement, the CWBA. So it was a women's business center. And I watched her start that, So I think I've kind of watched her in different capacities in the sphere of entrepreneurship in business. And so I think it was not surprising to me that she ended up starting the business. It was not surprising to me that she pursued entrepreneurship. I think if you knew her, you'd be like, she was born to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, well, maybe she can be a guest.
Yeah, she would love to be a guest.
That's funny. I just wondered if that had played into your, the whole maid idea, if it was part of that, watching her, be so, I guess, I don't want to say unstructured, like she wasn't structured, but the opposite of, a structured job. If you saw that growing up and maybe that led to part of that or no?
No, I do think, and I've said this, to her, I've said this in other situations. I don't know if I would have jumped into entrepreneurship if it wasn't because of her, because I did see her thrive in that. I did see her thrive in kind of that high pressure, fast moving, you got to assume a lot of leadership responsibilities. She thrived in it, and I think the seeing her do so well with it made me a lot more comfortable with, yeah, maybe I'll give this a shot.
That's
I
great.
don't know if I would have, if I left teaching, I don't think I would have independently been like, yeah, I want to start a business and I'm going to do this thing online. I just had I had no idea. Yeah. So I think her being there was crucial to me becoming an entrepreneur.
And that goes back to my question that I asked before was there a major like life-changing decision in your life that you've made? And I think that would probably be it, right? Because had you not joined with your mom, what do you think you'd be doing right
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes I think about that because, it's always fun to play the like, well, what if, right? I definitely don't think I would have been teaching. I think I was trying to pursue, maybe some jobs in higher ed. And beyond that, I don't honestly know what I would be doing. I think I knew I was hungry. And so that's that weird thing about like, I love the stability of being in a corporate, bureaucratic kind of professional job. I love the stability, but I always knew I was hungry for more. And I knew I was kind of destined for something bigger
now?
that in a way, I'm just I don't even know if I want to play that game where would I be if I weren't an entrepreneur? Because it's like there's no other option.
Yeah, you've made it and you're very
Yeah.
entrepreneurs. So yeah, that's just so interesting. I know that at least in my life, there have been 3 or 4 like major forks in the road, and it's hard not to, but when you're so successful, it's like why would I even try to imagine that? you know?
No, and honestly, I think that the thing for me is, I look at, well, one, I let my teaching license expire intentionally. It was like the burning of the boats. I'm like, nope, I cannot even have it active because it's not an option. I cannot go back. And I think even still, sometimes we'll talk and my mom and I will talk and I'm like, if I had a 9 to 5 job, I don't even think I'd be able to make that much money with my degree. I have an English degree. I have teaching experience. Like that is not an in-demand job, right? Like no one's
Oh,
actively seeking that kind of person out. And so I was like, I just don't think that the salary capacity or opportunity is even available to me. So there's just no way.
no, I agree. And since I've been in this world, I think a little bit about my background, but for anyone who might not, is that I came from well, actually, way back, I came from a performance background, which definitely doesn't pay a lot of money, but real estate
Oh, I
agent.
didn't know that. But
Oh
actually
no,
the arc of you being from performance world to real estate, that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
because I was performing, so I was waiting tables, right, to make money because you
Mhm.
don't make a ton of money when you're performing unless you're on Broadway, which I was not on Broadway, so the money was not good. So I'm waiting tables, and some guy says, "Hey, you have a great personality. You should be a real estate agent." I'm like, "Okay." So I took my test. I got licensed, and that was 18 years ago. Um,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So in the last 5 years, I wanted to elevate because I am the type, which is it's funny that we're talking about education because I am that type that I need to always be learning. Always,
Mm.
I have to be learning something. I would go from course to coaching program to course, always something. So I started this journey of digital marketing back about 5 years ago. And I couldn't believe the world that I was introduced to. I mean, there are so many, again, opportunities, not just for entrepreneurship, but to learn now that I didn't even know about. I mean, my goodness. And the money that is possible to earn in this space is absolutely insane. It's like there are 2 worlds. It's like this is the world of reality and 9 to 5, time clock, whatever. And then there's this world of digital products and services that's just unbelievable to me. Do you agree?
Oh yeah. And I think it's fun explaining it to people who are not entrepreneurs, isn't it? Because they're like, wait, so what? Like what is it? What is it that you do? Like I have to explain, I'm like, yes, there is literally a world where you can sell your expertise and people will want to work with you. That
Yeah,
exists.
for a
Yeah.
lot of money,
For a lot
right?
of money. Yes.
Because yeah, it's such a great example. So my specialty, I do digital marketing, but my specialty is funnel building, right? That's what I do. I
Mm.
build funnels, right? And so along with that, I build simple websites for people like, I'm building one for a band right now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But, when you tell somebody in this world over here, for anyone that can't see me, I'm just making a world with my hand, world over here, what it would cost for something like in this world over here, then they're like, what? you know? So, I mean, I told him what I would charge to build him a website, and he almost passed out. So it's interesting to kind of, do we stay in this world and just work with these people, or do we try to educate these people in this world on the value of this world? Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I think it depends if they aspire to grow in some capacity, whether or not they're entrepreneurs. But yeah, I often wonder the same thing because I always spot the opportunity if someone's like, "Oh, this would be a great idea," or "I should try this." I'm like, "Well, we could turn that into a course." They're like,
Yeah,
"Really?
you could
Someone would buy that?" I'm like,
do
"Yes."
anything. Tell me the weirdest, not weird, uh, maybe the most unusual course subject that you've helped create.
Oh my gosh. Let's see. Now I'm tapping into 7 years of creating courses. Um, I think some of the most interesting have been, there's 2 that come to mind. I think one is okay, I actually have one. No, this was from like 7 years. This was like one of the very first sales conversations I had. I did not close this client, but I will always remember it because it was so different. And then I have 2 others I'll tell you about.
Okay.
Um, the first, so I went, networking at a chamber event, and I met this guy, and his job is he is a Santa Claus. He's an older guy,
Oh, fun.
retired teacher, got the full, very much looks like Santa Claus. There
Okay.
is a whole world of older guys that this is their gig. They are Santa Clauses.
Yeah.
And he wanted to create this course to help them become more profitable in this. So how do you go from like which jobs do you say yes to? Like how do you maximize your visibility? Like how do you turn
It
that into a business? Isn't that so cool? And I was like, wow, there really is a world for just about everything, isn't
really
there?
is.
Yeah, and I never ended up working with him, but I'll always remember the idea because I was just like, that is just
That's
so
a
cool.
fantastic idea. It actually
Yeah.
reminds me because, not to bring it back to me, but my performing days, most of them were, in a costume, like a character costume,
Yeah.
Disney, and then Sesame Street Live, and uh, I played Elmo and some other characters, and I was really, really good at that. Like that was I really think like, other than like digital marketing, I love it. It's my passion, but I really truly think that my one talent is how to be an animated costume character. Like I really do. So
That
I
is
thought,
so cool.
and I've thought to myself, could I create a course for that? Like, but I bet you could help me.
No, you probably could. It's like you just attach it to something tangible. Like how would
Uh,
that benefit somebody? But
no, I know that's so the Santa story kind of reminded me of that
yeah.
a little bit, but okay. So go ahead. You said you have
Oh,
two.
so the other 2. So there's one I worked with a psychic medium, and she was developing a mediumship skills kind of course. So for
Oh,
beginners, people who wanted to tap more into like how to be intuitive, and uh that really wasn't anything that I knew anything about. And so that was just really fascinating for me to learn, because it was so intangible and so ethereal to me. I'm like, I just learned so
yeah.
much from this person. So that was a cool course that I built. And then I was talking to someone, we were just chatting about it. I don't think it ever turned into a course. But she was like, I love watching football, and I have taught entrepreneurs how to use football sports as part of their networking strategy, as part of their sales conversations, not to educate other people about it, but like, how do you relate to other people, right? It's through a common denominator. So it's like, if you don't like, this would be a perfect course for me because it's like, I don't know, I didn't know anything about football until I married my husband. And I could take a course like that, learn how football works, and it's like, there's your conversation starter. Business and sales become easier.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's just really cool the ideas that people come up with.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that for you is that you're still learning, even though
Always.
even
Always.
creating courses, you're still learning yourself, which I love because that's your thing, right?
Yep.
That's cool. Now, you mentioned your husband? Is your husband also an entrepreneur?
No, he does corporate sales.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
So he works in a huge company, does sales for them, loves selling. So he's definitely a sales guy. I don't know, maybe he might have entrepreneurial aspirations,
I
but
sales and entrepreneurship is kind of, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like it's along the path to entrepreneurship, maybe.
I would say it definitely makes things easier, because I would say that, for when I think back to the beginning, I was like, I didn't know anything about sales. I had no idea how to think about sales, how to position sales. Like, I had no idea what the sales process was. There's a very funny story that I often tell people, who are asking me about the early entrepreneurial days. And, I went to this networking event with my mom, and I didn't understand how networking worked or how sales worked at the time. So I'm like in the car, visibly nervous, and anxious. And my mom was like, what is going on with you? What's wrong? And I was like, I have to close a client and I'm so nervous. And she was like, that's not how this works.
Yeah,
I
you
just
can't
had no idea.
be you can't be shaking when you're delivering your pitch, right?
No, but also she was like, you're just going to connect with people, just talk with people, right? That's not like, you don't go into networking events and like automatically close. So like, that's
Oh,
not,
right,
yeah.
right. That's so funny. And I truly believe, and I've learned this from my current coach, Josh Forney, little shout out. He's amazing. Um, but the idea that relationships are the currency of the wealthy. I just love that idea, right?
Hmm.
Because it's so true. It's especially when we talk about this world versus this world, right? In this world over here, it's just all about exactly networking. Anywhere you go, really making a relationship. Oh, who do I know that could help you, and sort of introducing you know valuable people to valuable people. So
I think this is one of the biggest lessons I would share with anyone about relationships is when I think back. Now, I'm not saying that paid ads and, doing a lot of the online stuff doesn't work, but I would say for the fastest traction, long-term results, right? For you to get quick traction, fast results, the relationships are crucial. And I'll tell you, when I think back to some of the most amazing clients I've worked with, some of the most amazing revenue generating opportunities I've ever encountered, when I trace all of where did that come from? It started with a relationship. It was not because of a Facebook post. It was not because of a Facebook ad. It was because of a relationship. And I think, as you're saying earlier about AI, I think
yeah,
that, one of the things that cannot replace AI is the human connection right now, anyway, right? In 2024, right?
it
It
can't.
isn't right. No, and it cannot. And I think that has also made entrepreneurship so fun, is just the relationship building. And so I think that, you cannot overlook that.
No, no, it's absolutely crucial, and that's why it's so tough for people that I think back to the born or made for people that feel that they're made. I think it agree. Tell me if you agree or disagree that it's harder or more challenging to make those relationships. You feel that way?
I actually think it's probably going to depend on the person, right? I think that there are some people who are like, they want quick, like immediate results. They want things right now. There's sort of the impatience, or, that I think makes it difficult to build relationships. But I think for someone like me, who is like, I'm just naturally into nurturing relationships and
Right.
connections with people. So relationship building just came so easily. Whereas I think for some people, it might be more challenging. And I think I've had some entrepreneurial friends who were born to be entrepreneurs. So I'm not saying this is a blanket statement,
Yeah.
but they've very much been like, they're so good at sales, they're so good at strategy, they're so good at like the online stuff, that they're like, oh yeah, building relationships is kind of important. I'm like, yes, it is. Yes, because, anytime you're like, oh, I need someone who could be a guest on my webinar or my podcast, or, oh, do you know someone who's looking for speakers? I'm like, how do you've built that through relationships. You
Yeah,
find those connections through your network. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I just saw. Do you have a dog? I just saw. I think a dog behind you.
Yep. Yep. I
All
wasn't sure
right.
if you were going to hear her click clacking on the
So,
floor.
gotta switch gears for a second because I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm the most avid dog lover in the world. I have two myself, actually. So please tell me, what kind of dog do you have?
I have a German Shepherd.
Oh, big one. Is it a girl?
Yes, she's a big girl. Yep.
Girl, what's her name?
Her name is Rhea.
Rhea. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Your only one?
Yes. Although I'm convincing myself that I'm an entrepreneur because I just want to figure out more ways to find and adopt and have more animals. So Step one is I need a bigger house with more land.
Yes, me too. Oh my God, my boyfriend makes fun of me because I want so. Have you ever seen? There's it's like it's not a meme, but it's a graphic of a couple in bed, and the guy has like dogs all over him. Like
Oh,
there's
I
this
would love that. I would love
one
that.
dog like with his legs, like the guy's head is in between his legs, and there's just dogs everywhere. And the
Yeah.
wife reading a magazine, and she looks over and she says, "Oh, honey, there's a cute little puppy up for adoption."
Oh, I know. We
That's
have to be
me.
so, well, I think the two of us together, oh, you could probably see her a little bit in the back.
I can't.
Um,
But oh, hi, there she is. She's a
yeah.
cutie.
So
Yeah.
so I have a bed in my office where she'll just sit, and while I do my calls, she'll just hang out while I do it. So it's just the best. You know what? That's another reason why I love being an entrepreneur, is because I can hang out with my animals all day and I
Yeah.
don't have to go into a job or corporate office or school.
You know what I love? I love working in my PJs.
Yeah,
That's
that
what I
is
love.
nice. That is nice. Yes.
Jessica, do you have kids?
I do not. No, not
Well,
yet.
okay, okay. Very good. So you have just your fur baby.
Oh, yes. Yes. And
Yeah.
very, 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 like, she is just, you're the apple of my eye, aren't you, honey?
Well,
She's like,
that's
yes.
awesome. All right. So I want to ask you a couple just more random questions, if that's
Yeah,
okay.
go for it.
All right, here's one. If you could have dinner with anyone in the world, who would it be?
Ooh. Ooh. That's a good question. Um,
I know
that's
I'm
a
kind of on the spot there, but
that's
that's a
a tough one to answer because like five different faces popped up in my head. Um, I think I would love to have dinner with someone like Lady Gaga because
oh,
now there are lots of different people. I've got historical figures, I've got like other contemporary people, but I just am in a space right now where I admire people who are really creative and who are very artistic in how they do things. And I think the way that she performs, the way that she puts shows together, I think is so interesting to me that I would want to hear like, how do you, because I work behind the scenes in so many of my clients like launches. I'm like,
yeah.
how do you put that kind of experiential show together? And I've just always admired how she in particular has done that.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
'Cause isn't part of your service orchestrating and putting together events, or no? I thought you
Yeah,
told me that.
part of it, yeah. So I work with people who are like, if they have a course or a program and they're trying to launch it and they host like an enrollment or sales event, I
I
help them
see.
put the
Okay.
content together. But
Okay.
it has to be, it's an event, it's an experience. And so
Yeah.
I'm very fascinated by people who know how to put on a show.
Right. Right. That's interesting. That's an interesting answer. Okay. All right. Next
Hmm.
question.
Yes.
I'm assuming you read a lot, right?
Yep.
Okay. Best book when it comes to learning about a business and entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurial mindset type of book.
I would say this is a very specific book. I actually have it right here because it's always by me. Um, it is Copywriting Secrets by Jim Edwards.
Yeah.
I have this book dog-eared, bookmarked, highlighted, and I'll tell you why specifically a copywriting book, because this totally changed how I communicated. It
Really.
totally changed how I communicated, how I wrote, how even when it came to like speaking and talking, because it teaches you how to take what it is that you do in your business and sell it. And how do you do that through communication? And for someone like me who was academic and I didn't understand sales, I didn't understand how to write about or communicate what I did, that book was a game changer. I tell everyone I work with who is like, they're trying to host webinars or events, or they're trying to just get in front of more people and speak. I'm like, read that book. It will change it
That's
for
so.
everything for you.
I have the trilogy, the Russell
Yep.
Brunson trilogy, but I don't have that one.
Oh,
So
it's so good. Yeah.
now I wonder, what's going to happen back to the AI topic. To all of you guys who are learning about how to make effective copy, and really make,
Yeah.
like, there are some people that just do copy. That's what they do. So I wonder how AI is going to affect that.
I've got two ideas, because I'm not a copywriter myself. I write copy, but
Right,
I
right.
that's not a service I offer. But I do think that, one, it's going to force not just copywriters, but I think a lot of us, you cannot be mediocre. You got to be good at what you do. And so I think, in that vein, the more you have experience, the more you've tried things and tested things and just done human things, the more valuable you are to your client. Because if you think about it, right, your client's coming to you because they want your insights, your know-how. What do I skip? What do I avoid? AI can't tell you that. So can AI, yes, spit out a sales page? Yes. But it hasn't had experience with launches. It hasn't had experience with doing different things with copy. I'm just using that as an example.
And
Um,
different people and different.
yeah. Like I
And
think about, anyone could go to AI right now and build a pretty generic, mediocre course outline. But the reason they come to me is because they want to know, like, okay, is, what's the best way what's the fastest way to put this together? What's the easiest way to launch this? When you've tried this with a client, what worked for them? How can I do things better? They really want to get more of the insights of my experience than necessarily just plucking an outline from my brain. So I think it's really going to force us to be like, you've got to be so valuable to your client, more beyond just I can write your copy, I can, put a funnel together. It's going to challenge us, I think, in many ways.
and again, it's going to go back to the relationship. It has
Hmm.
to, because you can. I don't know how deep you've gotten to experience ChatGPT or any of those,
I
but
do like ChatGPT. I use it a
yeah, I mean,
lot.
it's pretty freaking cool, right?
It
And you
is.
can, like, there's ways to program it to. I don't know if you've done this yet, but it's this super cool thing. You can ask it to ask you 10 questions about yourself.
Yes.
You answer those questions, so then now it kind of knows who you are, when it can kind of speak from your perspective, whatever. So I think that aspect of it is as close as it can get to actually just understanding your partner's pain point, or not your partner, but your client's pain points,
Hmm.
and what results they want. It's going to be interesting to see how much further it can go.
Oh, absolutely.
I know we've
I
talked
don't
about.
think it's going anywhere. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think we're going to have to learn how to work with it and use it. And so I remain kind of neutral about it in terms of my own opinion. I'm like, try putting that back in a bottle. It's not. So we might as well just figure out, how can I be smarter about my services and position myself to be more valuable and strategic to my clients. And how can I also harness these tools so that I'm not in the dark and wondering, like, oh, I didn't know that existed, or it could do that. It's like, no, I want to be in the know.
Use it to your advantage rather than
Hmm.
using it as an advantage, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Because oh my god, I just totally lost my train of thought. What was I going to say? I was going to say, because I think right now, truly, we're the early adapters of this AI technology. So if we learn to understand it and how we can use it to only better or offer more value, I think that's the key.
Oh, completely. Yep. 100%.
All right, cool. Couple more questions, and then
Yeah.
we're gonna sign off. All right, this is gonna put you on the spot.
Oh,
But
I'm ready.
favorite movie ever? Favorite movie of all time?
Legally Blonde.
Are you serious?
Yep. It is my comfort
Oh,
movie. It's probably not what you think I was going to say. It is my comfort movie. It is my favorite movie in the entire world. I love it. I don't know if it's the nostalgia of when I first saw it. I was 13 when it came out. But I can watch it hundreds of times and I never get tired of it. So if I had to pick one, that would be it.
oh my God, that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Okay, last question. If you had to eat one thing for the rest of your life, what would it be? I love that.
Ooh, if I had to eat one thing, potatoes. I love baked
I'm a
potatoes.
fan.
Oh my gosh. Never, like, people cannot take a potato away from me. I like mashed potatoes, baked potatoes, pan fried potatoes, French fry. I love potatoes. So
I
if
share that
I,
with.
yeah,
I could eat like an entire gallon of McDonald's like fries. Oh my
yeah,
God, I love. But you know what?
yeah.
I'm on a keto diet, so now I can't have it.
No. It's funny. My husband started keto a couple weeks ago and we were going through, like, I was like, what is this keto thing? Like, I knew what it was, of course, but I was like, what really is it? And I was like, you can't have potatoes.
No, no,
Like, I'm not doing that with you. I'm sorry, you can't take the potato away from me.
that's awesome. All right. Well, Jessica, I am so happy you came and chatted with me today. This was so much fun.
Yes, thank you so much. This was just such a fun, relaxed conversation about being an entrepreneur. So this has been a blast.
That's awesome. And that's what I'm hoping for. It's just a comfortable place to kind of sit and chill and talk, you know? So
Yeah.
I'm glad that you were my first guest, and I look forward to networking with you in the future.
Likewise, likewise. Thanks so much for having me.